What celebrities have you encountered that were either really nice or really horrible? Deleted. Flava Flav ate at the restaurant I work at once. He made a huge deal about having to sit somewhere private because he didn't want any attention. When it came to pay his bill, he tried to pay with a prepaid Visa that did not have enough money on it. Edit. Spelling. My only experience with Guy Fieri thus far was cordial. Did a guest presentation for us and took plenty of photos. But every time there's a wildfire or other depressing thing going on around here, he has his second responder crew ready to feed and care for all the first responders. Samuel L. Jackson at the Calgary Stampede in Canada. He was super nice. My family went up for it because my uncle is part of the committee that organizes the Stampede every year, and he got us VIP seating. I was a kid at the time and I was like, does your wallet really say OBAMF? He laughed and said he left that one at home. Of course, when I told the story at school I told everyone his wallet did in fact say that. I met Vin Diesel at a truck stop diner when I was a kid. It was like 4 in the morning and me, my grandpa and Vin and his friend were the only ones in the diner, and we ended up getting sat at the table next to them. Vin and a friend were getting ready to go on some fishing trip, which was made obvious by the clothes they were wearing. My grandpa struck up a conversation about fishing with him, completely oblivious to who he was. He was a really nice guy and apparently knew a great deal about fishing techniques. I was a bit geeked out and didn't say much or contribute to the conversation, but I spent the next hour of our road trip explaining to my grandpa who Vin Diesel was and why it was a huge deal we just met him. Met Dave Chappelle a few years back. Long story short, a friend of a friend got me and 2 friends into an after party. We were sitting at the bar when his manager offered us some shots. We talked with his manager for a while. Then Dave sat down near us. Dave was kind of sitting by himself and he looks over at us and goes, "What's going on, fellas?" And we talked to him for about an hour. We thanked him for coming to our town. Talked about music, sports, all kinds of stuff. Super cool dude. One of my favorite memories. My husband and I were wandering around Philly a few years ago and Don Cheadle was walking toward us. We both stopped and turned as we watched him go by. After he passed us, he turned around with a big smile and waved/winked. I just thought that was pretty cool. All of these were waiting tables. Waited on Gene Wilder for his birthday years ago. He was incredibly nice and laughed so hard he cried when I told him we had everlasting pistachio ice cream. Betty White was hilarious and tipsy after wine and would not stop flirting. If I had been 60 years older. NPH was also gracious as humanly possibly. Insisted we have a drink with his table while we waited on him. And tipped like a champ. Seth MacFarlane was amazing. Drew me an original cartoon and signed it there at the table. After paying and tipping 100%, he refused to let me buy him a shot of whiskey and instead bought me one. Then invited us to meet him out later. I served Daniel Radcliffe his dessert at an event and tripped and spilled some of it on him. Probably due to seeing that I was serving Daniel Radcliffe. And he stood up and started apologizing profusely to me. Was very sweet and asking if I was okay. When I was a teenager, I met Neil Armstrong at a retirement ceremony that my dad brought me to. It was at a museum and it was a private event. There was time for everyone to wander the museum. And my dad saw Mr. Armstrong looking at one of the planes that my dad helped design. Nobody else around. They struck up a conversation and Neil asked me questions about what I was studying and how I felt about the work my dad did. My dad worked on classified planes when I was much younger. He seemed like such a gentle guy to me. A bunch of other men suddenly joined us and started asking him for autographs, which he declined. It seemed to snap him out of his happy mood. And he kind of shut down and walked away. At that time I thought he was a bit of a jerk for not saying goodbye or anything. But I recently read about the hard time he had with fame. And I guess it makes sense. Went with my parents to a function for some charity group and we shared a table with Ice-T. Super nice guy. Down to earth. And not high on himself. He has a mouth on him, but when he found out my dad is a retired preacher never heard a bad word again the rest of the night. I ended up talking music, and how he goes from rap to metal. Man is cool, and knows his shit about the metal and punk scene. My mom and sister met The Rock when he was still a wrestler. They had a couple car seats and tons of bags, having a hell of a time getting off the plane, and people were waiting, and then this massive guy offered to carry some things for them, and they happily took the help. He grabbed some bags and held the baby carrier with my niece in it and helped them off the plane and left. After, people kept going up to them asking how they knew The Rock, and they were very confused until someone explained who he was. I was working on a set once where John C. really acted as one of the main characters. It was a pretty small set and low budget, not even sure if the show ever aired, so we all found ourselves working closely together for the most part. I sat across from him during lunch one day and we chatted for a bit about random stuff. The guy talks the same way he acts, which is why I think he plays such a great character in any comedy, because he quite literally plays his own attitude in many roles. At least it seems. But anyway, he was a very nice and down-to-earth guy. I found it hard not to giggle every time he spoke, because I just couldn't shake the image in my head of all the roles he's played. Bumped into Gordon Ramsay in the lift in a hotel in Hong Kong. He was very friendly. We didn't talk to him or ask for a picture. I just blurted out, "You're Gordon Ramsay," and he acknowledged and smiled. He insisted on us going first because we had our suitcases with us. Wished us a nice day. Said bye several times when we saw him in the lobby again. Very friendly. I met John Candy on a plane when I was a little kid while traveling with my family. He was a big man. He had the whole row to himself in front of us with the armrest up between seats so he could be more comfortable. The stewardesses were blocking anyone from coming up and bothering him, even though they themselves were not exactly leaving him alone, what with talking to him constantly and laughing at his enjoyable banter the whole trip. At some point he got up to go to the bathroom. When he came back he looked at me, pretended to do a double take like he was surprised, and said, "Hey, you're the quietest kid ever. Don't you talk?" The way he said it was so friendly that I just smiled and giggled. Then he had a pleasant conversation with my parents, who had been dying to talk to him the entire flight, but were too polite to bother him. Not even 2 weeks later we heard he had passed. I met a few celebs working as an event photographer for fundraisers from time to time. Chevy Chase. Well, the stories are true. He was a huge jerk. Jamie Lee Curtis was one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Bar none, and easily the nicest celeb I met working the camera. Very considerate and thoughtful person. She kept checking with us to see if she could do anything for us, or if we needed any more shots she could help with. Great sense of humor too. Met Colin Mockery at some obscure convention in my city. He actually talked to us for a few minutes and I basically just fangirled about whose line and Royal Canadian Air Force. Really great guy. He has my absolute respect. I ran into Adam Sandler outside of a Planet Fitness in Brooklyn in early 2016. As I was leaving the Planet Fitness, it looked like he was walking in. We made eye contact, so I stopped and held the door for him. He got to the door and stopped right before he walked through, in one of those fake poses that little kids make when you tell them to freeze. I stood there holding the door, plenty confused. For about 5 seconds, we just stood there, him motionless and I standing there holding the door. Finally, he turned his head and said in the stereotypical Adam Sandler voice, "Are we kidding? I'm not going in there." Giant grin on his face. We both laughed, and then he continued down the street. Awesome. My mom spotted Robin Williams once, and she went up to him and asked if she could get a quick photo. She didn't realize he was there in the middle or about to do something with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, so she waited until they were done around 20-30 minutes later, and then a bunch of the kids and people wanted photos with him. He made it a point to stick around and told his staff I think that woman wanted a photo and made sure she got it. Mom was thrilled. He was such a humble, nice dude. I met Buzz Aldrin and have a good story. I met him in 2009 and 2013. At the 2013 meeting, I said I met you before in 2009 and he said what took you so long to come back? Jamie Lee Curtis. I worked with special needs young adults and was with a client at GameStop. A woman walked in with a teenager and they were shopping around. We were the only customers there, and when she asked for help from an associate, I loved the way she spoke. I went to ask her where she was from and stopped before blurting out, "Wow, has anyone told you that you look exactly like Jamie Lee Curtis?" To which she smiled and replied, "That's because I'm her." I apologized and let her get back to her shopping. Afterward, as she was about to leave, I asked her if it would be alright if I called my wife and told her where it was I ran into her. I didn't know if she wanted her location blasted, and she said of course. Want to take a picture? Absolute solid human. Love her. I work in Hollywood, so I've encountered a lot of celebrities. Nicest, Tom Hanks coolest, Dwayne Johnson funniest, Danny DeVito most genuine, Adam Sandler sweetest, Diane Keaton most outgoing, Adam Levine wildest, Steve O most down to earth, John Bernthal most difficult, Jennifer Lopez. I met the street Bernard dog from Beethoven at Planet Hollywood when I was a kid. Seemed like a pretty nice dog in person. I met Kiefer Sutherland after one of his gigs, and he was the most humble celeb I've ever met. So genuine and nice. He took pictures with everyone and signed everything. There was about 15 people. He even had a chat with us all and thanked us for waiting for him while he was doing a radio interview. Used to do delivery runs for a catering company, and we would get a lot of celebrities at the airport that ordered from us. Johnny Depp was the only one I ever saw face to face. Dude pulled a wadded up bill from his pocket and tossed it at me. I thought it was cool. I got a tip directly from him at all. But once I had it all unwadded, it was $100 bill. Snoop Dogg. Totally. Unflappably chill. 100% of the time. It's like a superpower. John Bon Jovi. Smoked a cigarette with him. Couldn't have been more down to earth. I believe he's making BBQ sandwiches for homeless people as we speak. Otto. Jeremy Piven. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. Must be method acting for the Airy Gold role. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.